It is my pleasure to welcome Sir Richard Stagg. He is the British High Commissioner to India. Sir Richard, it's a pleasure to welcome you.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to start off with the broader economic scenario, and how do you see economic scenario improving in the next year or so?
Well, I think it's going to need to be driven by the private sector. So that's the UK government's view, that it's a time when the governments of the world need to, in a sense, step back and allow the private sector to resume its major contribution to generating global growth. I think there's been a period, inevitably, when governments have been very central to the global economy and have been playing a role in supporting businesses and indeed in rescuing businesses in some cases. That can't be the long-term model. I think what we need to do is to get governments to see that their role is to, in future, set the framework, make it benign and favourable to business, but then to allow business itself to lead the way, generate the growth.
I think as somebody who is very passionate about entrepreneurship, that's very gratifying to hear. And that leads to my next question, which is, entrepreneurship should be empowered, inculcated, and given the boost, because I think at the end of the day, you need entrepreneurs as stimulus for the economic improvement. What is your take?
I'm sure you're right. We do need to have the raw animal spirits of entrepreneurship being unleashed. And I think that it's very difficult to know exactly where the government can help most, because ultimately I think you're talking about something that's quite deep in the soul of people. It's how they feel, how they approach their lives and their engagement with the economy. I think that we've got to be cautious as public servants to believe that we can in some way nurture entrepreneurship as such. I think we can create an environment in which it's more likely to flourish. We can remove barriers to it. We can ensure that where it emerges, where it exists, it has the best chance of succeeding, but we can't of ourselves create it.
Empowerment of entrepreneurs requires the environment and the right attitude of the governments at the same time. Silicon Valley is a great example, but amazingly, Indian entrepreneurs in Britain have done really well.
Yep.
And they are still contributing, not just to Britain, but to the world economy. What would your take on that?
No, thank you. Well, I think that we are very fortunate in having in the UK a very dynamic Indian community which is entrepreneurial from sort of top to bottom in a way. I mean, you have those who have, in a very modest way, by global standards, developed small businesses, whether in the retail sector or in the manufacturing sector, which have flourished thanks to their energy and input. We've also had those who have developed and grown businesses to a much bigger scale. And I think there is a level of ambition and aspiration in many cases amongst the Indian community, which may reflect the fact that coming from an environment where life was more of a struggle, that perhaps helps you to have that edge, which if you've lived in a more comfortable sort of middle-class environment, it may be less easy to inculcate that edge. And so I think the Indian community in Britain has provided a rather interesting sort of outcross in terms of the gene stock to those who have been dealing with more immediate and real challenges of a rather direct and personal thought, whereas in the UK we have in general a relatively comfortable society. People have not been sort of feeling under great pressure to do things and to deliver, because we've had a fairly well-resourced social security net, a well-resourced environment. So I think there is an issue that those societies in which the challenge of success are greatest may be where you get the most edge to your entrepreneurship.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is, in a vibrant and rich country like Britain, you have culture not just from India, from around the world. But coming to the Indian entrepreneurs, they have a cultural influence, and that's where India comes into play. There has to be a synergy, a strong synergy, which is the economic synergy between the two nations to develop this, especially in these times.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're doing a lot of things to create that synergy and take it forward.
Well, we are. I think that we believe that there are many areas in which the government can help to, as we said, create the right environment. We are supporting a lot of research programs between academic institutions, universities, colleges in the two countries, which we're very focused on trying to ensure lead on to real-world developments. We think it's important to resource relatively pure research, relatively upstream science, but we need that over time to cascade down into the development of new products and services. And we think we are, with India, doing a good job working with a rather dynamic Department of Science and Technology. And we had a conference only 10 days ago here in Delhi looking at how we can ensure that the impact of this investment in research report is delivering real-world changes. And Sam Petroda came to talk about how he sees these science partnerships actually delivering change.
So Richard, thank you for your time and the opportunity.